Thank you, Anthony. Also, not thank you for asking me to speak tonight. I'm definitely very nervous, so bear with me here. I just got 5 months yesterday, and I've been coming to 5D basically since like day two of that. But I still like don't really share, talk a lot. So this is kind of a big step for me, definitely going out of my comfort zone. But I'm gonna try to take you guys through how it was, how I got here, and kind of how it's going now. Um, so just to start with like a little backstory, I guess. Growing up, so from like the outside, materialistically, my family was pretty stable, and I'm definitely grateful for that. Just in terms of like food on the table, clothes on our backs. What kind of my siblings and I struggled with a lot was that our mom was and still is an alcoholic. She's still currently suffering in her addiction. Um, and we always had a kind of weird relationship with it because she was definitely like the functioning alcoholic, if you will. She would kind of do all of her shit during the day, but then as soon as like 5 or 6 p.m. hit, she hit the bottle. So she had a really like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde situation going on where during the day she was kind of like all business, and then at the night she was like very emotional and talkative and expressive. And yeah, that was kind of just a weird thing to grow up with. And I also mention it just because my drinking, like in a lot of ways, kind of mirrors hers. And then on the other side, so my dad, he was and is also very like devoutly Catholic. He actually found his faith from going to Al-Anon while my parents were dating. So for him, like the biggest thing for all of us kids growing up was to sort of impart that like religious knowledge and religious ideals kind of on us. And so we kind of went to church every Sunday, Sunday school every week, the whole nine. And yeah, that's kind of how it was just from like my family perspective growing up. It was kind of a weird dichotomy having this like really intense religion and then also having this like intense addiction like in the same home. But kind of how I was growing up, from like a very early age, I think I definitely had that like self-hate or like self-critical voice kind of in the back of my mind. um, I was just thinking about it when I was thinking about sharing today, and I think like the earliest memory I have is like in fourth grade or something. I think I weighed like 10 or 15 pounds more than my friends, and I thought that was like the end of the world, and I decided to stop eating because I hated myself so much, and I had to do something, like anything I could do. And that's some pretty like heavy thoughts for a fourth grader to be having, but I know that's kind of an outside issue, but that sort of is kind of like one of the many manifestations of kind of that root cause of a lot of it, which is like my intense self-hatred and self-criticism. And so kind of how that progressed in terms of middle and high school, my kind of innate response to that feeling of like inferiority or self-loathing or whatever was just to be like insanely overproductive and overachieving. I definitely am a workaholic. And so by the time I was like a senior in high school, I was taking like 6 AP classes, playing varsity soccer, managing 5 clubs, pretty much like creating 15-hour days for myself as like a high school student, just because I literally couldn't like bear the thought of like not doing anything, because if my mind wasn't focused on something, then um, I was gonna like hate the negativity that was kind of rattling around in there. So that kind of set up for still how I am today for sure. And in terms of drinking, so my high school wasn't like a big drinker school. There weren't like a lot of parties or anything. There were a couple of times that I did end up like going out for like a New Year's party or something like that. And I definitely got out of control sort of in all those instances. But it wasn't really a big thing for me in high school just because of the accessibility. Like I just didn't really have access to it. But what I really found in high school that worked for me was smoking. That was kind of more the social vibe or the social thing to do. And I started off smoking socially, and that quickly turned into pretty much smoking every single night before going to bed. And I would kind of have those like long days that I described where I would just go to school, then varsity practice, then work, and then I would literally have like 2 or 3 hours at the end of the day, um, just to sort of like be with myself and unwind. And I just like couldn't do it. Like I had to escape. So smoking was that for me in high school. And then once I got to college, that definitely continued, but the drinking environment definitely changed. That's where I got my drinking wings. Sort of everyone went out every weekend, that's the normal thing to do. And I was like, fuck yeah, let's go. So definitely for like my first 2 years of college, I think um, I kind of had this like nice mix of pretty much smoking every weeknight during the week to like escape, and then drinking to excess and blacking out like every single weekend. Obviously, that's not like a manageable lifestyle, but like that was kind of how I was managing it. And I also thought I was okay because I had everything from the outside together. Like I still got pretty good grades. I've always been a good student. I was able to work through it all, and sort of like from the outside people were like, oh, you're killing it, like you're doing well. So I kind of just didn't think there was like a problem to be addressed. I was like, this is just how we're going to do it, and this is how I've been doing it for so long, so we'll carry on. um, and kind of in those first 2 years, a lot of shit I think happened, and like questionable and dangerous stuff happened when I would go out and drink. Just like the classic kind of waking up with bruises or being told of like putting yourself in like very dangerous situations and waking up the next day and not even knowing and being like, cool. But I was just so numb to like everything that was happening that it just didn't phase me. And I didn't really even want to fathom the possibility of like changing my ways. And kind of one of those things that happened when I was drinking like so much like that those first 2 years. I actually went to a party one night for my friend's birthday, and I had never had sex before, and I blacked out. And then I woke up the next morning and found out that I had sex for the first time with two people in one night, and I had zero memory of it. And the situation itself is concerning, but what was more concerning is like I felt nothing about that. Like when I found out the next day, I literally didn't care, was numb, like wasn't phased. And even still to this day, I'm like unpacking that. So kind of a lot of stuff like that happened during my drinking career. But surprisingly, those things weren't like the rock bottom that brought me to these rooms. They weren't sort of what led me to dig deeper or finally admit I had a problem. I think just because again, I was kind of numb to everything that was happening. But what happened last year, my junior year of college, is I had to actually take a drug test for a job that I wanted for like an internship. So I couldn't smoke anymore. So pretty much I quit like cold turkey. I was willing to do it for the salary, so I kind of didn't think twice about it or what would happen. And slowly, that like I told you guys, I had that routine of like pretty much smoking during the week and then like going out and like going crazy on the weekends with drinking. That like very very quickly shifted into daily drinking, just because now that I had kind of taken away that crutch of like smoking at the night to escape, I just couldn't bear being sober no matter what it was. Like my only two modes were working during the day to like keep my shit together on the outside, and then escaping with like some substance. And since weed was taken out of the equation, naturally drinking kind of picked up and progressed really quickly, I think, just because of my alcoholism, obviously. But I kind of went on drinking like that sort of pretty much every single day, like regardless of what was happening or who around me was drinking or if there was a reason. Obviously, none of that mattered. I kind of drank like that for maybe a year, and my mental progression was definitely slow but steadily like deteriorating. I already struggle with anxiety kind of just as a baseline, like even still now sober, but the anxiety that I had from drinking like while sober was just insane, like crippling, paralyzing. Some days I just like literally couldn't even like get out of my bed to talk to anyone. Um, or sometimes like my social, like I really doubted my social abilities sober because I thought that I could only do that when drinking, because drinking has this like magical social elixir vibe to it. So I just kind of was really deteriorating quickly. And also kind of while all of this was happening, in the back of my mind was sort of um, my mom's drinking, and how when my siblings and I were growing up, we always like hated it. Like I always personally kind of promised myself like I'm never going to be that. Like I'm never going to do that to my family or to my kids or my friends. And then here I was doing it. So there was kind of just so much like mental racket and like existential like questioning and dread, and sort of that same Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde situation, really like led me to having no sense of self. So I was in a pretty dark place. I got sober this past July, so like right before that, and I don't even know what caused it. I was just talking to my friend and roommate Annie, and I was kind of just like going on about how miserable I was and like how it felt like unsolvable or incurable. And finally, I kind of call this now just my higher power because I would not have wanted to admit it at the time. I just said I think the only answer is getting sober or going to AA. And as soon as I said it, I wanted to take it back. I was like, no, 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 never mind. I'm not committing to that. Like, I'm not doing that. But once it was kind of out there, I was like, fuck. And then the next day, my roommate Annie, she was like, she's been a great friend and supporter through all of this. She was kind of like, do you still want me to go with you like to an open meeting today? And honestly, like the answer to that question was really just motivated by like pride and my ego. I was like, I can't have just said I wanted to do something yesterday and then not go do it this day. So I was like, fine, let's go to the meeting, like let's do it. And I was like kind of not even thinking about or comprehending long-term sobriety at all. And we went to a meeting like 20 minutes outside of where I live. And it was like this small, like close knit group of like people. I was definitely the youngest there by like 40 years, honestly. And like I said, I feel like everyone knew each other. So there was like a little bit of discomfort in that. But overall, I definitely got like an overwhelming sense of relief just from being in the rooms where sort of everyone was talking about their struggles so openly and talking about things that I understood and felt like maybe, I don't know, I never really had an outlet like that, even just to listen, let alone share like I'm doing tonight. But I kind of left that meeting just feeling like I took a really deep like breath, like a mental or spiritual breath. I don't even know how to explain it. And I still wasn't contemplating long-term sobriety, but I was like, I think I could not drink tonight, and then I'm gonna find another meeting to go to tomorrow. And that's how I ended up finding 5D. I like went online and I was like, I need to find young people. Like that was a great meeting, but I need some diversity and like age and everything like that. So I came on here the second night, and it's been ever since then. 5D has been a lifeline. I love this meeting so much. I got a sponsor pretty quickly right away from here as well. I think she's here tonight. Shout out Jane. Oh, I don't know if I just broke anonymity. But she's super cool. She was kind of like, when I first started talking to her and met her, I realized how like similar we were both in how we are now and how we were when we're drinking. And she's just like a really cool person. And I didn't know being cool and being sober was possible. And she showed me that like from the very early stages. So that was definitely super crucial to me. And then just since then, I've, like I said, been coming every night. I've made a couple of close friends from this meeting, even though I don't like share and talk a ton. Um, but even just coming has kind of been super influential in my growth. And I think I'm running out of time here, but I'm going to quickly kind of just talk about, I'm on step 4 right now, so sort of just a couple of things that have like happened or what I've experienced in my program so far. Just being in the early stages and like being in the middle of it, I feel like gives a little bit of a different perspective. So sort of the first thing with step 1 in terms of admitting powerlessness and that your life had become unmanageable. For me, powerlessness wasn't an issue. Like it was pretty obvious that I was blacking out, that there was sort of no control whatsoever, despite my attempts of moderation or whatever it might be. But admitting unmanageability was a lot harder because when I first came into the rooms, I definitely had a huge case of imposter syndrome. I sort of being like 21 and kind of still in college and still doing all of this shit, like I felt a little differentiated, but really what kind of made me not be able to relate as much was kind of just hearing people talk about getting DUIs or going to jail or getting divorces or things that from the external are like very obviously unmanageable. I couldn't really relate to that, and so I thought, you know, I don't deserve to be here. I don't need help like this. But what I really kind of had to come to terms with was what my unmanageability looked like, and it kind of was more internal or on the inside. I sort of described how I kind of went downhill once I was drinking, but just because I like had my shit together in terms of like grades or work doesn't mean that my life was manageable whatsoever. And I kind of had to really realize that in order to like earn my spot in these rooms just to myself. Like obviously no one was saying I couldn't have a spot here, but kind of doing it on my own terms and really working through that first step. And then just quickly in terms of step 2 and 3, kind of finding my higher power and turning myself and my will over to it. Like I said, I grew up Catholic, so I kind of approached religion as I do like classes and schoolwork. I was like, learn the 10 Commandments, learn the 7 Sacraments, and you're good to go. So when I kind of came in here, my sponsor was like, no, you need to like um, find and pursue like a personal spiritual connection and a personal relationship. And I didn't know what to do with that, so I had to go back to the drawing board. And I probably looked like a crazy person at the beginning, like literally just laying in my bed at the end of the night, like talking to myself. But that's kind of how it started. I just had to like vent, get my fears, frustrations, anxieties off my chest, and kind of do that every night as a daily reprieve. And slowly but surely over time, I realized a lot of the time I was like praying for answers or like mechanisms to control things that were out of my control. And ultimately I sort of realized, oh, like that's what serenity and surrender is surrendering that control. So rather than praying for the answers, I'm praying for acceptance. And that's kind of something that I was never really able to understand before truly pursuing and having my own spiritual journey. So with that, I'm on step 4 now. I don't have as much to say about it because I kind of just started. It's definitely a lot of like action oriented work, which for my workaholic, like productive mind, I can like beat myself up into trying to be like super productive and like getting all of my inventories down really quickly. And I know that's not the case. So I'm trying to tell myself to kind of like slow down, have grace with myself, and take time. Um, but yeah, that's been my journey so far. And kind of just to close, I want to say I think the common theme, well, it says in the big book, like our liquor was but a symptom. So we had to get down to the causes and conditions. And I think for me, definitely that one of those at least causes and conditions is that self hate that's been there forever. And the one thing that I've loved about just coming to these meetings or this program in general is it's really been the only form of self-love that I've ever found that's worked. Like people have always said, oh, love yourself, be confident in yourself. And I thought that all just sounded like superficial BS. But like every time I log on to a meeting or every time I call my sponsor or sort of have one of these kinds of conversations, as I think Louisa always says, the program works if you work it and work it because you're worth it. That's like the only time I can like admit to myself that I'm doing something to like care for myself and improve myself. So yeah, I have a long way to go, but I think I rambled for long enough now. So I'll shut up and hear from you guys.